Okay guys, so we're going to go ahead and go over to Unit 3 review for today, starting with question number 1 here, find the rate of change. When I'm looking for the rate of change, I'm looking for the slope. Okay, so I'm looking for the slope here. And so the slope is m equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so what does that mean? I'm going to pick 2 points. So here I'm going to go ahead and pick 2 y points, 80 and 40. So my slope is going to equal to 80 minus 40 divided by, now I've got to pick the corresponding x points to my y points. So 10 and 5. So that's divided by 10 minus 5. So I'll get 40 divided by 5, and that will give me 8 as my slope. Okay? Moving on, find the rate of change here from a graph. Now always start from a y-intercept. So if it touches the y-axis, you can always start from there and then move up from that point. So here you can tell I'm moving up here, 80, and going over 2. So my slope, m, is equal to 80 divided by 2, which will give me 40 as my slope. Now, if it doesn't start at the y-axis for some reason, then I can always look at the rate of change from 2 other points. So I can go from here, from 80 to 160, and then from 2 to 4. Okay, and what that will give me is 160 minus 80 divided by 4 minus 2. Now, if I start at this point, that's my point 1, and I go up to the second point, then I subtract second point from the first point. That's why it looks like 160 minus 80 over 4 minus 2. Over here on number 2, you'll see that it's going down, so you should get a negative slope. See here, I'm going to get a positive slope, which would be 80 divided by 2, and that will give me 40. Okay, so the same number I got from before. So over here, if I take a look at this, if I go from point 1 over here and then go down, see how I'm going down? So that means now I'm subtracting. And I go over to the right, then I'm going to have a negative slope. So 200, it'll be 200 minus 300 divided by 3 minus 6, okay? Actually 6 minus 3, okay? So that's what it would look like. You will figure that out when you see that. So here, I'll have my slope. It'll look like this, 200 minus 300 over 6 minus 3, okay? Now find the zero, the x-intercept and slope. When they talk about a zero, they're talking about the y-intercept. So where's the y-intercept? The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So here is my 0, or y-intercept. So that value is 0, negative 4. If I look at my x-intercept, that's down here. Okay, that's 6 comma 0. So from here, if I have 2 intercepts, a y and an x, okay, here. So if I have a y and an x, then I can go ahead and figure out what my slope is going to be. So I have to go up 4 units and go to the right 6. So up 4 and right 6. That's because it is the rate of change is going up. So my slope is going to be 4 over 6, which reduces to 2 over 3. Okay, I can divide the numerator and the denominator by 2 to reduce it to 2 over 3. Okay, moving on to number 4. Find the domain and range. Okay, stuff that we didn't really like too much in the last test. A lot of people gave me the right numbers, but it was just in different orders. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead again and go over some of these problems. If I take a look at my domain is always the vertical line crossing through the endpoints from the left to the right. And so do you notice where does it cross the x-axis? It's crossing it here at -5 and then crossing it here at +4 at the end. So my two endpoints are from -5 to 4 for my domain. Now remember, that's an open hole or open dot, however you want to say that. So I'm going to say x is greater than -5. At the right endpoint, it's a closed dot, so I can include that point. That means I can include all values on the line up to that point. So, but it's not greater than that. So x is less than but equal to 4. So this is my domain. I call it DOM for short, okay? Then the next part I'm looking at is, what is my range? Well, my range has to be from the lowest point of the graph to the highest point of the graph. So do you notice that the lowest point is crossing here at -2? But at the highest point, it's up to 3. So in red, -2 is less than y, excuse me for my language, but is less than equal to 3. So that's my range. I'm going to call it RAN for range. Okay, that's what I have there. Okay, again, remember that we're going to use vertical lines to show my domain where it crosses the x-axis to go from one endpoint to another endpoint. And then we're going to use horizontal lines from the lowest endpoint to the highest endpoint to figure out my range. Okay, find a reasonable domain range. Joe had a summer job that paid $7 an hour when he worked between 15 and 35 hours every week. Okay, so something very unique right here. He's going to work $7 an hour. That's how much he gets paid per hour. Like if you worked at Fiesta Texas or SeaWorld, that's how much you get paid. Now, how much money you're going to make depends on how many hours you're going to work. So here's a minimum hours you're going to work. Here's a maximum hours you're going to work. So I'm going to go ahead again, use my domain, use it as blue, use the blue. And so my domain, D for short, is from 15 hours to 35 hours. That sounds reasonable. That's the amount of hours I can work. Okay, so here, that's my domain. Okay, now my range is in red. So my range is actually going to be an equation. I can work $7, I'm going to earn, $7 for every hour that I work. So that's 7 times x. So what is that going to give me? It's going to give me two possible values. 7 times 15 is my lowest amount of money I can make. And then 7 times 35. That's the highest amount I'm going to make. So this gives me $245 that I can earn if I work 35 hours, at $7 an hour. And the lowest amount is 105 if I only work for 15 hours. So my range, to simply put it, is the amount of money I can earn between $105 and equal to that, or up to, but no more than 245, because that's the most amount of hours I'm going to work is 35 hours. Okay, next one. Use the function notation, solve for the following. Find f of -2. Okay, so again, what's in here is my x. So that's going in here. You see what they put that there? Okay, so that means I'm going to put that number also in here. Wherever I see an x, I'm going to replace it, okay? So f of -2 equals 5 times -2 plus 9. So this gives me 5 times 7. Okay, so if I add, this is addition here, sorry, this looks a little sloppy. -2 plus 9, so this is a -2. I'm actually subtracting from 9, I get 7, and 5 times 7 is 35. That's all I have to do. Find the slope of the line whose equation is 3x minus 5y equal to 15. Okay, this is like doing literal equations before. You're going to have to move some stuff over to the other side to get y by itself. Since y is over here, the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 3x. Now notice there's not an x on the right side of the equation. So what's going to happen is that I'm left with negative 5y equals 2, and I'm going to rearrange this. So I'm going to write down negative 3x first, then plus 15. Okay, so nothing happened to this 15. I just wrote it over here. The negative 3x, I wrote it as the first term in the equation. Then after that, I'm going to divide everything by negative 5. So now, if I divide everything here by negative 5, I'm just going to get y by itself. I'm going to get a positive 3/5 times x minus 3. So this is my equation in slope-intercept form. What is the slope? The slope is this term right here in front of the x. That is my slope. So slope equals 3 divided by 5. Or if we want to keep the same colors, that's it. So again, to recap on that, if it's written, this is called standard form. You have to write it in slope-intercept form to find out what the slope really looks like. Okay, what is the slope m of the line passing through the points? Now remember again, slope is the same thing as saying rate of change. So you're going to see that being stated differently sometimes in problems, but they mean the same thing. When they ask for rate of change, they ask for slope, they're asking for the same thing. My slope is going to equal to, this is 0.2 right here, so I'm going to do -3 minus 1 divided by 2 minus 1. So what do I get? I get -4 divided by 1, which gives me -4. That's my answer. That's all I have to do. So I go in order. Here in blue would be my first point. This is, I call it P1. And then here, I'll circle this in red. This is P2. So I always do 0.2 minus 0.1. So the y2 minus y1, the x2 minus x1, which coincidentally, obviously, it looks like 2 minus 1, which is x2 minus x1, but that's just what the points turn out to be. Okay, last part of the problems. After a rainstorm, there are 2 meters of water covering, let me go ahead and make this a little bit smaller, covering a road. Okay, so the water recedes at a rate of 0.25 meters per hour. Okay, so now they give you some very important information. Water recedes at a rate. Remember what I said earlier? Rate and slope are the same thing. Recedes means it's dropping or draining, okay? So you can think of recede as losing. And so when you're losing at a certain rate, okay, this means losing at a rate of 0.25 meters per hour. This is actually negative because you're losing the amount of water. Express the depth d as a linear function of the time t. So it means d depends on t. Okay, so the equation previously is y equals to mx plus b. You've had that in your notes from last week. So now we're going to make substitutions for them. Y in this case, they're telling you, is going to be d of t. This looks very familiar to something called f of x, okay? As we're getting more advanced in our mathematical language, we're going to start learning how to speak with mathematical terms more often, and the substitutions between those terms. The slope, remember the slope I told you is the rate, and it's up here. The rate is going to be negative. I'm writing black so it's easier to distinguish. 0.25, and my x, okay, this is my slope, okay, and this time the x is not x at all. This time they replace it with t, so 0.25t, negative 0.25t, plus, then we have one more. The b is the y-intercept. In this case, the b tells us usually where do I start? Well, we noticed earlier it starts at 2 meters of water, so we're going to write down 2. So if we take a look at our answer, you notice here there's a star by there. That's your answer there, okay? All right, I hope this helps you guys out. I'm going to go ahead and post this up into Monday's folder. Just remember that your test starts on Tuesday. As usual, you go to CMS student icon in your Schoology page. You're going to log in. I already have the passcode there for you on Tuesday. Tomorrow, we're going to go over these problems, or Monday, we're going to go over these problems, and then you have the I do part for me to look at to see if you have any questions.